wind whistled low across the wide Montana plains, rattling the loose shutters of the lonely ranch house where Luke Hartley leaned against a rough-hewn post, staring at the horizon the way a man watches for salvation. For 10 long years he had lived with nothing but the stubborn cattle, the whinny of his horse, and the quiet, gnawing ache of solitude. Folks in town called him the loner rancher because he never came to socials, never looked twice at any of the women who gathered at the mercantile. Truth was, Luke didn't believe he was the sort of man anyone could love. The ranch was all sweat, dust, and back-breaking work. His hands were calloused, his shirt worn thin, and his eyes carried shadows of wars fought in his younger years. But winter nights bit deep, and silence could drive a man mad. So finally, in a moment of weakness or maybe hope, Luke had sent off for a mail-order bride. He hadn't asked for much, just a plain woman, someone kind, willing to share bread and conversation, someone who wouldn't mind the loneliness of a ranch where the nearest neighbor was 10 miles away. That's all he asked, nothing more, nothing less. When the stagecoach rumbled into town that spring afternoon, Luke's boots felt too heavy, his throat too dry. He braced himself for disappointment or relief. He couldn't tell which. But when the door of the coach swung open and a woman stepped down, his heart lurched like a horse spooked by thunder. She was not plain. She was not ordinary. She was radiant, hair like burnished chestnut spilling loose around her shoulders, eyes the startling blue of the summer sky after rain, and a presence that drew every gaze on Main Street as if she were royalty in silks instead of a mail-order bride in a modest traveling dress. For a moment Luke could not breathe. Surely there had been a mistake. Surely this woman was meant for someone else, someone richer, handsomer, more deserving. His chest tightened as he forced himself to step forward, hat clutched in both rough hands. "Miss Evelyn?" he asked, voice rough as gravel. The woman turned to him, and when her lips curved into the faintest smile, he thought the whole street brightened. "Mr. Hartley?" she said softly. He could only nod. The weight of every pair of eyes in town pressed on him. He knew what they were thinking. What business did a loner rancher like Luke have with a woman like her? Already whispers began to stir, and Luke's own doubts roared louder than any gossip. He had asked for a common bride. Instead, Providence or mischief had sent him someone far beyond his reach. The ride back to the ranch was thick with silence, except for the creak of leather and the crunch of wagon wheels on gravel. Luke kept stealing glances at Evelyn, each time scolding himself for it. She sat upright, graceful as if the rickety seat were a throne, yet there was no arrogance in her eyes. Only watchfulness, perhaps even weariness. Luke wanted to ask her why she'd come, why she had chosen to answer his letter out of all the ranchers and merchants who had written, but his tongue was clumsy, his heart tangled. When they reached the ranch, Luke braced himself for the look he expected. Disappointment at the humble shack, the rough barn, the endless emptiness stretching around them. But Evelyn only drew a deep breath, her eyes scanning the horizon, and whispered, "It's beautiful." Something loosened in Luke's chest. A knot he hadn't realized had been tied so long. That night, as they shared bread and stew at the plain wooden table, Luke found himself listening more than talking. She asked about the cattle, the land, the storms that swept through in summer. She asked as though she truly cared, not as though she were enduring small talk. And slowly, the walls Luke had built around his heart began to crack. But the fear was still there, coiled tight. Every time he looked at her, he thought, "She is too beautiful, too fine for a man like me. She'll see the truth soon enough. She'll want more than I can give. And when she leaves, it will gut me worse than if I had stayed alone." Evelyn, though, had her own secrets. Luke didn't know yet that beauty had been her curse. Men in the city had wanted her for shallow reasons, for a face and figure rather than a soul. She had longed for a place where honesty and hard work mattered more than charm. That was why she had answered the letter of a man who admitted he had nothing to offer but honesty and a roof. She was not here by accident. She was here by choice. As the night deepened and the lamp burned low, Evelyn looked across the table, studying the man who wouldn't meet her eyes for long. She saw in him not a loner to pity, but a strength no one else had taken time to notice. A strength she wanted to draw close to. "Luke," she said softly, "perhaps you don't know yet, but I didn't come here for a grand house. I came here for truth. And I think I've found it." Luke's breath caught. For the first time in years, hope flickered bright and dangerous. Perhaps this woman, too beautiful for him by the world's reckoning, was exactly the woman meant for him all along.